Welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and in this video we have a few more Rainbow Six Siege professional NA roster changes to look at. So we already saw Drip leaving Beast Coast, we saw Skies leaving SSG, and next up we have Supr retiring from Siege, so leaving the active roster for the Sonics. I imagine he'll stay with the Sonics org in some capacity. He's made it abundantly clear that he doesn't intend to become a coach or anything, that he will help the team in the transition from having him on the roster to having whoever they find to replace him on the roster, but beyond that, he doesn't really plan to coach, and so probably he'll be doing a lot of content stuff. He has a very popular stream. He's easily one of the most popular Rainbow Six Siege streamers, and I imagine that'll continue. And it did feel like this was coming for some time, because not only did he say at one or more points that he was sort of considering retirement, and of course at the time that he was considering it, he opted to continue playing, but now here he finally is retiring. But it did seem like he was really trying to build up his brand. He now has his charm in the game, and you know, he seemed to be really setting himself up in terms of his stream and content creation and whatnot for when he transitions away from playing competitively. And okay, so yeah, definitely a big blow. I think the Sonics, we'll see if they can operate the same without him, because four of those players were just on United before, along with Alfama, and they were not a good team. It's not 100% clear if, given more time, if they could have become a good team, but certainly with the influence of Supr, he molded them into a good team around him. Those four players: Grixer, Kansan, Yeti, Rexon, and so we'll see who they bring in to replace him. I would imagine they're looking for an IGL. I don't know if any of those four players really lend themselves to being an IGL, but also maybe they're considering the fact that in the current meta, and well, this could change in the future if the meta changes again, but for the time being, seemingly, I don't know that you need a dedicated IGL a lot of the time. Probably you do need one primary person to make final decisions in some cases, but largely you just want like multiple, if not everyone on your roster, to just be pretty vocal and you know, call when there's opportunities that they see and whatnot. So one player that I've heard, and I think the front runner, according to leaks and rumors and whatnot, is Gunner from Parabellum. So we'll see about that. I mean, my understanding is that Gunner's a pretty vocal player, but I don't know if he would necessarily slot into being an IGL. He certainly wouldn't slot into playing Supr's roles, where he's been playing quite a lot of support. I suppose this last stage, maybe he moved away from support a tiny bit, but still, I mean, largely was their support player, just maybe on defense, not always the straight up anchor. So yeah, I just don't think his roles really overlap too much with what Gunner's been doing and what Gunner did very successfully in his rookie stage of the NAL. So yeah, I guess that's what's going down there. And again, we'll see if the Sonics can continue to have as much success as they have had in the last year or two. You have to imagine that it is just like pretty much all because of Supr. I mean, you can't doubt the prowess of the players on that team, but again, he did bring them from pretty much the worst team in the US division all the way up to, you know, debatably the best team in NA by some metrics at some points, whatever, you know, maybe a debate there, but okay. Yeah, I guess that's enough for that. Let's go on. We have one more player to talk about. Okay, so Chala departing from TSM. So a little bit funny that it is Chala, because he's the newest player to join the roster. This 5-man roster has been together for quite some time. One of the longest standing rosters in Pro Seed, maybe even the longest, not 100% sure. But yeah, Chala joined some time ago, and you know, he used to be on SSG back in the day, and then he got dropped, went down to Challenger League, absolutely slaughtered in Challenger League, eventually made it onto TSM, and became a world champion not too long ago. But with two pretty rough stages for TSM coming out, they got 9th place and then 8th place, pretty rough. And I mean, admittedly, they were just a handful of points away from climbing up several places in the standings, but I guess they wanted to change, and maybe it just ultimately came down to Chala's decision, because the way that they've sort of been talking about this, it seemed like Chala just wanted to step down. Maybe they would have given TSM, this 5-man roster, another opportunity, or I don't know the org's feelings about it really. Maybe they just sort of think this team is good enough to just decide what they need to do with among themselves, as they did just win the most recent 6 Invitational. So yeah, players I've heard to potentially replace Chala. I just saw a leak, a rumor or whatever, talking about Poison, so we'll see about that. Role wise, I suppose it does make sense. They probably are looking for a support player to replace Chala, who played a lot of support along with Geo, and I don't know if they are looking for an IGL. I don't know if Merc is still the IGL, if they went back to Achieved, if anyone else was doing it, but they certainly have at least 2 players in, again, Merc and Achieved that have IGL'd in the past, so I would imagine will still continue to be able to do so unless they want to restructure their team in a way that they think that those players can play better when they're not on IGL, so they do want to bring in a primary IGL. Unclear. So maybe Poison in that case, and so we'll have to see. And then the other one I think I've heard most prominently is Xeno, who I don't think would slot in perfectly with Chala's role. So if that was the case, maybe they put somebody else on more of a support-oriented role. I don't know if that would be achieved, maybe. I'm not sure. It seemed weird to not have Merc and Bolo on fragger entry type roles. So we'll see about that. Yeah, just a lot of shakeups. So I mean, Chala and Supr and Skies all going at the same time is a massive shakeup. Drip as well, I suppose, but maybe just a little bit less tenured of a player as these other these three are just like absolute titans. And so it seems like we are transitioning into sort of a new era of Siege, particularly in NA, where a lot of the T2 players are really hungry and are finally being given their chances. For the longest time, for years and years, it was just like the same, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, however many players that sort of just got recycled that played on several teams and were never really spectacular. So I think it does make a lot of sense to transition to giving these younger players a chance. And I mean, it's worked out. Astralis, a pretty young team, has just like skyrocketed to the top, and same thing, I suppose, with Xset. And maybe those are the two best examples. A lot of the other teams are extremely well tenured, you know, TSM, SSG, but both of those teams making changes. We'll see who they pick up. And at this point, it seems like they are both planning to pick up pretty young players. And same thing with Sonics. Maybe they'll be picking up a young player. They're not exactly a newish roster. Rexon's been around for quite a while. Yeti's been around for a very long time. Kansan's relatively new. Grixer also kind of been around for a while, even if he wasn't maybe a household name for some of his playing career. He certainly is now, but okay, so yeah, I guess that's probably enough. This is getting to the point where it's a similar length to the previous videos where I discussed this sort of topic. So okay, yeah, I mean, if you heard any other rumors that I didn't mention here, feel free to mention them in the comments. Otherwise, I mean, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, I suppose, for other things you might want to see me talk about, feel free to leave them down below. And other than that, I guess a like and a subscription would be appreciated. And so with all of that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.